If you want to be more effective in your work and in your life, and you'd like to have more confidence that you're meeting your intentions, this is where it begins. Welcome to Do Busy Right, helping you organize your information and manage your attention so that they work for you, not against you. We educate you and encourage you by discussing ways to be more effective, not more exhausted. Let's do busy right. Hi there. Today, I want to talk about architecting your digital sanctuary. The reason, I'm sure a few months ago, maybe a year, around 2024, the end of 2024, you might have heard some buzz around monk mode. And that term, I think, has had its moment. I think it got its 15 minutes of fame and has moved on and been replaced by other conversations. But I think the core idea behind monk mode is real valuable. I want to today show you that creating a focused work environment in your computer space, a digital sanctuary, doesn't have to be heroic mountain climbing level stuff. And that's one of my problems with the term monk mode, is it makes it feel like we're doing something extreme. The mental image is a monk in a brown robe with a belt made of rope, barefoot, funny haircut. And what it takes to get into that, then it seems to us to be, oh man, I've really got to invest in this. I've really got to, get down into monk mode. And I'm here to tell you, it's not that hard. Okay. Which is good, because since it's not that hard, you can set an expectation for yourself to do it a good bit more often and a good bit more useful to you as you learn how to set it up. Okay, so I want to convince you today it's easy, it's practical, something you can do on a regular basis. And when I say a regular basis, this is a good space to be a few times a week. Okay, it shouldn't be a quarterly exercise, right? Now, duration is something you control, and we'll talk about that. But that's what I'm talking about, is I think this is a good place to be. And that's why it's important to you. Intentionally creating these periods of focused work will make you more efficient, first of all. It'll help you produce better quality work. It will allow you to work faster. And maybe surprisingly, as is typical for me, I'll argue that it'll lower your stress. We think it's the other way around. We think we're going to have to get all stressed out in order to do it. But actually divorcing yourself from your electronic communications, shutting your digital office door once in a while, is actually great for lowering your stress because it helps you get things done. Okay. Now, imagine this rhythm. Okay. Well, here you are. You're booking along through your day at work, and you've got an hour planned and protected in the afternoon where you shut your office door, settle in. You've got some work that is demanding that you need to get taken care of. Demanding does not mean painful, but you got some work that's demanding that you got to take care of, and you can shut your office door and you can shut your computer door. Now, if you can do this and put your focus into the work, imagine how that would feel. And it's in your rhythm. You can do it. It doesn't have to be some big strain, and it doesn't have to inconvenience the rest of the world. So that's what we're aiming for, is to get this in your hands so that you can work in these ways and do better work and feel better about the work that you do. If nothing else, it'll get you away from time to time from feeling like everybody else in the world is jumping on you, trying to get you to do their stuff. And that by itself is a calming realization. So I want you to have this in your toolbox. So when we talk about digital sanctuary, okay, again, the idea is to close your digital office door, okay, just like you close a physical one. And it's to eliminate interruptions and to a lesser degree, distractions, okay, that happen to us while we're trying to focus. The enemy of focus is interruption, multitasking, and distraction. Okay. And we're going to set this thing up, this digital sanctuary, so that it takes care really of all three of those different components. So close your door. Again, monk mode, I think it's off-putting. I think it implies something that's really hard and it's too angsty, right? I mean, monks are like little anxious little people. Okay. And all of this extensive preparation to be a monk. And all this just invades our mental image. And we go, well, I don't want all that to be true in my life. I don't blame you. I wouldn't want it to be true in mine either. Okay. But I think we can, chill out a little bit. Okay. This doesn't have to be climbing to the top of a mountain or lying on a bed of nails or anything like that. It can be smooth and easy and done regularly to enhance your productivity. Okay. So we're really going to try to make that focused work get easy to get into and to have our environment, both the physical environment and the computer environment, to support us in having that focus rather than always serving up distractions. So I'm going to tell you how to do this on your computer and some tips for doing it in your physical world as well. So one of the challenges is it turns out that our brains really resist focus. Our brains really push back on focus. And why is that? Why do we perceive it as something that's mentally hard to do? Well, and it's because your brain is inherently lazy. And by that, I mean the evolutionary, if you follow that train of thought, sort of way. Okay. It wants to conserve energy whenever it can. And focused flow state work really uses up the brain's energy source, which, unless I'm mistaken, is glucose, but it like sucks it out of your bloodstream. And your body is geared towards not doing that, towards conserving energy. And your brain being your brain, it will present arguments to you against doing anything or requiring effort. This is this resistance that we feel, okay? And it's perfectly natural, right? You might be tired and not want to physically exert yourself for some period of time, okay? Fair enough. Your brain is the same. Okay? And it's this inertia feeling, and you felt it before when you're trying to start a task. This inertia can lead to procrastination, but it's that tug of, oh, surely there's something easier to do than this. So that's why your brain is resisting. And even small challenges, seemingly small challenges, like taking a software update before a meeting, can trigger the resistance. And once the resistance is triggered, it can be difficult to overcome. Once that inertia hits, it can be difficult to overcome. And so the goal then is to make it as simple as possible to enter a focused mode, right? My bass teacher talks about practice a good bit. And he says that one of the things that we should work on is our environment. I play bass, and if you know about bass, then it's really kind of hard to hear a bass unless it's plugged in. Same with electric guitars. Electric guitars are a little bit easier because it's such a higher pitch usually, but you really can't hear them and you can't see what they sound like unless it's plugged into an amp and all that. And my bass teacher says, well, what you need to do, the number of buttons you have to press or things you have to plug in or whatever is inversely proportional to your ability to get into practice. In other words, the more steps it takes, the more opportunities your brain has to resist the idea of, well, I'm going to practice now. And practicing, your brain doesn't need any more help than it's already got to try to convince you to not practice. So, uh, uh, and so that's that whole thing, right? The one button, the easy button. And if you had one button somewhere in your desk where the curtains came down, the physical door closed, your computer transformed into a computer version of the Fortress of Solitude where you have access to everything you need and nothing you don't, and the music came on and everything got quiet outside, your chair got comfortable, you're ready to rock. Okay. That'd be great, wouldn't it? And so we're trying to make it simple by overcoming. I can't give you an easy button here, but I can, I hope, get you much closer than you are right now. Again, the benefits of the digital sanctuary, okay? It helps us focus, which leads to increased efficiency. We're faster when we're focused, higher quality work. We make fewer mistakes when we're paying attention. Faster completion, I said that before, and reduce stress because you know that you can get in and get important things done. And you begin to learn that the world is not quite as urgent as you thought it was previously. That people increase the stated urgency of their requests in order to get attention to them. And they're not bad actors. They're just doing it. And quite frankly, we all believe that the level of importance I attach to a task should be the level of importance you attach to it if I need your help. That urgency that I have, we all believe we should be able to translate that or transfer that to the people that are going to help us. So we behave that way and we just communicate in those terms. And then we also have cultural imperatives around this. Good customer service is a notion, and we want to respond quickly to that. So these kinds of ideas. All right. Tactically speaking, how do you do this? Right. So preparation is actually pretty quick. It should only take you a minute or two to prepare. Now, and we'll talk about a different office here in a minute, but if you're moving offices, of course, it's going to take longer than a minute or two, but it really should be pretty tight and put you in a position pretty quickly. It shouldn't take, an 8-minute meditation routine to kind of get you in this space. So we want to think about the duration of being in the digital sanctuary. So I would suggest that you aim for a target of 45 minutes. And it may take you some trial and learning to get there. Okay. It may be that you're pretty comfortable doing it for 30 minutes, but you feel like you run out of ideas or something like that, and then try to push it to 45. Because it is a taxing thing to do. Okay. And so I would recommend, 45 pushing towards an hour, because while it can be easy to get into, it is not zero cost to get into, and you have to pay that cost back. Right. So think about 45 minutes. I was able to work up to 90 minutes, and that's as far as I really could push it. And the reason that it stopped then became a typical kind of physical concern, right? I felt the need to get up and stretch my legs, kind of thing. I felt the need to, you know, take care of take care of the biology, the machine, right? I in an hour and a half, I would run out of coffee, for example, right? Or need to take a restroom break or whatever. And so I set that and was pretty good about achieving it. Uh, and I'll say my focus improved both within those 90-minute periods and generally overall, because I learned how to notice when my focus was wandering. Okay. So I'd say anything less than 30 minutes, I mean, do what you can. Okay. But you start getting less than 30 minutes and the setup and tear down cost is going to factor in. Now, I don't know if you can do it more quickly than I could. Um, particularly if you're going to be changing offices, then you're really going to want to push for that 45 minute to an hour time period. And it's certainly possible. Don't get me wrong. I don't think I'm some superhuman freak here. I think it's certainly possible to get to 45 minutes and out to an hour. Now, about the physical environment. So this is really not the digital space is sort of a metaphorically physical environment. It's really not a physical environment, but we can usefully treat it as a physical environment in some ways. But we do want to consider the actual physical environment as well. If possible, then finding a quiet, dedicated space that's going to help you be free from distraction. I'm sorry, free from interruption. Okay. When I was doing this, I had access to a completely separate office in a different building that's very quiet. Nobody in that building knew who I was or why I was there. I didn't know anybody in that building. This is on campus. And so I was just able to walk in, walk down the hall, open my office door, walk in, close the door behind me, and there wasn't any, hey, how you doing kind of thing. Not that I don't like that. It's just that that would have extended the amount of time and extended the challenge. But that is a luxury that you may not have. And I don't want you to think that not having access to that luxury necessarily prevents you from doing this. Okay. But if it's available, we do want to take advantage of it. I don't recommend a coffee shop, although done properly, a coffee shop could be useful. A lot of people will say, well, I just like the background noise for a coffee shop. Great. Okay. Go to your quiet place, the quietest place you can find, and pipe coffee shop sounds in through your headphones. Okay. And I think that's great. Okay. We'll talk about your earscape, if you will, your soundscape in a minute. The point of all of this, oh, and by the way, if you change physical environments, okay, consider the ergonomics of your setup there versus the ergonomics of your more common location and make sure that they're similar at a minimum and probably identical. So here's the thought, okay? If you have a special keyboard that you normally use, and you set up this separate space for your retreat space, having a different style of keyboard will present a mental hurdle to your efficiency. Okay, so if you're going to have a separate space, okay, you're already making an investment. So just make sure that that investment continues along. I did the exact same thing. When I had this other office, I went and spent money I didn't have. It turned out to be a valuable spend to replicate my desktop setup in the new office. And I mean, it just about exactly dual monitors, the exact brand of keyboard I had in my normal workspace. I use a trackball, so I got another trackball to put in this. And frankly, that wasn't what was in there. And this was, in fact, this extra office was a shared space. And so, I had to go in and move the existing peripherals and put my peripherals in place. And then when I got done, I had to remove my peripherals and put the previous ones back in place. So there's going to be a little bit of cost there, but I definitely think it's worth it. Because if you've bought special tech for ergonomic reasons or for speed reasons or whatever that is, then you should honor that. Okay. And if you haven't, I would suggest maybe look into it. Okay. Typing in particular has become such an amazingly valuable skill in productivity. But anyway, I've talked about that in other places. So The environment, if you change environments, it can be very valuable because it's been shown that your brain habituates to physical environments. Okay, that's a complicated way of saying that if you take your skull to a place where you have habitually done good focused work, then that predisposes your brain to slide into that mode. And we know this from sleep studies. So the sleep experts will say, reserve your bedroom for sleeping. And that way, when you go in there, your brain goes, ah, this is the place where we sleep. And it goes, okay, let me get ready to sleep. Okay. Now, again, it's a little bit of a luxury, but it's worth it if you can pull it off. Okay. So that's the physical. Now, the headline is the digital environment. Okay, and there's lots of things you can do here because there's lots of flexibility in the digital environment that many people haven't explored, but we'll kind of keep it to a fairly minimalist set. All right, but your mindset is it's the equivalent of closing your office door in your computing environment to shut down and send signals to other people, maybe, that you are to not be disturbed. Okay. I said maybe about sending signals. I don't believe I would go so far as to worry with a, email autoresponder for this time period. I think most people underestimate the amount of time they could carve out away from their email. I think most people overestimate the typical level of urgency of the communications that come to them. And quite frankly, one of the goals here is to convince your brain of that. Okay. So, in general, we want to shut down notifications. We want to turn off buzzers and beepers and anything that can distract us from the place, again, the digital spot where we are doing the work. If you're writing, the digital spot where you're doing your work will be your word processing software, probably Microsoft Word. And so we want to minimize the different distractions there. Okay. So that means shut down your email. That means turn off your phone, all these different kinds of ideas. Okay. But learn how to do that on the computer and learn how to do it quickly and easily. Okay. And I've given tips on this from time to time, but learn how to do that. So just shut everything down. And if there's an easy button you can use to get there, that's great. One of the tactics that I use is the Microsoft Windows virtual desktop functionality. So I can flip over and get a nice shiny blank desktop where my email is not up and my chats are not up in my vision. They're still up, but I can't see them. And so that helps me avoid those distractions. So shut down notifications on your computer. Minimize I'm going to say minimize the presence of your phone or mobile device. Okay. It has been shown that just the presence of this device, silenced, airplane mode, whatever, in your normal field of vision will present a distraction. Most of us. Most of us are so used to reaching for the phone that it has now gotten to the level where we have to actively resist the urge. Okay. And I think that's the mechanism. We spend mental energy resisting the urge to pick up the phone and get on Facebook or whatever it is. So we want to minimize that. So put the phone in a drawer. Okay. Put it in your briefcase. Put it out of sight somewhere. Of course, you're silencing it, airplane mode or whatever that looks like for you. But you're silencing it and keeping it silent for the period of time that you've committed. It's not going off and never coming back on. Okay. Part of the ritual is when we come back out of it to thoughtfully reset our environment. So don't worry about turning your phone off and forgetting to turn it back on. We'll take care of that. Okay. but you really want to minimize its presence. Put it in airplane mode, or put it in a time lock safe, right? It doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you want to power it down, power it down. Okay. I find that to be unnecessary, and it takes too long to power back up, but your mileage may vary. Okay. And the habit forming will help you here. All right. Background sound management. Okay. We are carefully tuned to hear things, and it's a distraction. Hearing half of a conversation, like if you're listening to somebody talk to somebody else on the phone, is a mesmerizing thing because our brain has a deep desire to do the other half of the conversation. And if somebody says your name, you're going to alert to it. Okay. So we want to manage that, right? Also, a lot of people like to play background music when they work. And I would suggest that for this exercise, you probably don't want to play music like you're thinking, okay? Like top 40 music, right? I would say music, especially lyrics, is prone to distraction. And rhythm, also less prone, but still there. And some people say, well, when I run, I choose the rhythm of the music that I listen to, so it helps me run. Well, running is not a real thoughtful endeavor when you get that good at it. Okay. And so I would just suggest that you try it without. Now, in my own case, when I was doing this to write my dissertation, I used yoga music, and that's my term for this uh, soundscape that's not really rhythmic. It certainly doesn't have any vocals, but it's kind of a pleasant, tone on tone, multi-layered thing. And its basic job is to act like white noise and mute extraneous sounds. Okay, and it's very good for that purpose. But if you start bringing in words and rhythms, then you're going to find yourself distracted and singing along. Okay. So yoga music is what I call it. You can also use various natural sounds. There are great free sound generators that you can use, and they have things like rain and ocean waves and these sorts of things that can also be very useful. I found setting it up and tearing it down to be a distraction. And so I just clicked on yoga music, right? Meditation music or whatever they call it. Headphones can be useful. The trade-off is the physical sensation. Is it a distraction versus your ability to control your soundscape for the entire space? So if you don't have a private office, then you might find it's difficult to control the soundscape with anything other than headphones. Okay, so that's the balance there. And then I mentioned before, another great tactic, and I mentioned this before, is use virtual desktop software. Okay, and I described it a little bit. It acts like the easy button on your computer. So what happens is if you want to get into a distraction-free environment on your computer, then there's this process of shuffling windows around and closing things and opening up other things. And that can be frustrating, and it can be distraction prone, because in order to shut down your email, you have to look at it. And it's very natural when you're looking at your email anyway to just say, oh, let me get a bit of quick scan. And so you go over there to turn it off, and 5 minutes later, you're answering emails. And so we want to avoid that if at all possible. So the virtual desktop, basically what it does is it shuts down the existing desktop and opens up another one. And by default, the next one, the new one, is blank. It doesn't have the windows up that your previous one had. And so what you can do is you can get those windows up, and an open window will persist on the desktop that you opened it to. You can move it, but it'll stay there while you switch desktops back and forth. Most well-behaved apps will do that. Some I've seen don't. Okay. But that's pretty easy to deal with. And so what you have is hey, Word or whatever your focus tool is open over there on this other desktop. And your email and your distractions are open over here on this desktop. So when it's time to get into this, then you just switch desktops. It takes about 3 seconds, maybe. Okay. Now, if you're in a different physical environment, there are some constraints on your ability to do this. If you share a computer, for example, you might want to be careful with that. Okay. But if you share a computer, then you probably already have a routine for getting it, logging in as you, so to speak. And that also can be a way to deal with the virtual desktop situation. Now, in practice, I use 5 to 7 desktops. I have dedicated ones for email and communication. I think this is a good tactic, even if you're not trying to do monk mode. Okay, I've talked about it in other places. Setup's pretty straightforward. So I'll get a link to a video I recorded on that in the show notes, which, by the way, I failed to mention that I do stuff like this because I want people to thrive. I think that our information environment should be something that supports us and helps us rather than something that tears us down through constant interruption and distraction. And so this is what I do. And people find it immensely valuable. So if you're looking for ways to use your digital space, your computer and the associated pieces to help you be more focused and more productive, then I'd love to talk with you about that. You can reach me, Larry at Do Busy Right, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find. And so if that's something you're interested in, love to talk with you. Okay. No obligation, all that sort of thing, just so we can share some thoughts about using the tools for productivity and the productivity of knowledge work general. So virtual desktop software. So go look for that video, and it's about a 3-minute video. And I talk a little bit about how to do this. Now, the other thing that I had that's a little bit strange, but I do suggest it and recommend it, is I had a focus ritual checklist. Okay. And that's what I called it. I called it my focus ritual. And this was, okay, what are the things that I want to do to get into this space? And I made it intentionally into a ritual because that's another thing that will help your brain recognize that you're about to ask something different of it. And thus your brain can learn how to prepare itself. And so as you're walking through these rituals, that's the point of rituals in human life, is to get us to a place where our brains are thinking in certain ways. Most ritual that we think of is spiritual in nature. And I, of course, am a Christian. And so the rituals that we engage in on that front are to get our minds in a particular state, right? And I'm not talking about magic mushrooms, and I'm not talking about, pain resistance or anything like that. I'm just saying, okay, we want to have an attitude of, in my case, worship. And so we have some rituals that help us get there. And so this is a powerful thing in the human psychology, is to walk through a ritual. And so that's one of the reasons why I did it. And also so I wouldn't leave out steps. Okay. While I was learning to set this up, I would add things to my checklist. And then I'd walk through the checklist. And I would say, okay, we're walking through this checklist. Hey, brain, pay attention to what we're doing, because here in a second, I'm going to ask you to really focus hard. All right. So puts your brain on alert kind of thinking. So a few key steps. So first, the very first thing you want to do as you're beginning to walk towards this fortress of computer solitude, okay, the first thing that you want to do is check all of your communication channels, just briefly. Okay. You're not checking for work to do. That's not it. You're checking to see if there's something unavoidable. Okay. And there's a reason that we're doing this. And it's over time, this will help you convince yourself, i.e., your brain, that it's okay for you to spend this 45 minutes and nothing's going to burn down. Okay. But part of that is this: if you leave your communications in an unknown state, then part of the urge to drop your focus will be, wow, it's been a long time. I'm afraid there's a fire somewhere. I'm afraid something's a real problem, and they're all tapping their toe waiting for me to show up. And that's a very powerful distraction, very powerful distracting thought when it happens in your brain. So we want to kind of defuse that a little bit. So go out and check your stuff. Okay. Now, do you actually deal with any of it? Maybe so, maybe not. Probably not, if you can get away with it. But just be aware of the state. And so hopefully you're looking at it and you're going, yeah, it's okay. Nobody's screaming right now. And so I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go get in my quiet place. Okay. 2 is to set up the digital environment. And we talked a little bit about that with the virtual desktop. But open kind of necessary software and get to the right place in your document. If you need multiple resources set up, then go ahead and get those open and set up. I mean, arrange your desktop, unless it's a virtual desktop and it's already arranged. Okay. This is also to kind of help you be ready. You don't want to rush this step. Now, the work that I was doing at the time when I was performing these focus rituals was demanded lots of different things. Okay, so I was usually writing in a Word document, but I had a reference manager and I had some internet capabilities that I didn't defeat for myself, because sometimes you just want to go out and ask a quick research question. Spaces for notes and things and all these different pieces. Well, you go ahead and kind of get those open so that you don't have to stop and worry about it. So that if there's an update when you open a piece of software, you can go ahead and deal with it now, and it won't be a distraction during your focus time. Okay. And your mileage may vary on that. Shut down the notifications on your computer. Dingers, ringers, and pingers. Shut them down. Okay. And again, this is a great place for an easy button. Okay. And you can build an easy button. My easy button is none of my apps ping at me, period. Things don't pop up on my computer desktop. Nothing makes noise at me. The only thing I allow to make noise at me is my phone vibrates when I receive a text. That's it. I don't have meeting reminders. I don't do anything when an email shows up. I just don't want the distractions. So I'm pretty close to this during my normal workday. Okay. And I have a rhythm that allows me to check emails and do all that sort of thing, in the right time and space. So shut it all down, then adjust your soundscape. Okay. If you wear headphones, put them on, tune the music, right? If you don't, then just tune the music, right? Get it going. Okay. And hopefully it's not lyrical, doesn't have lyrics or rhythm. And I think you'll have the best. And it doesn't have to be music. Again, it could be like coffee shop backgrounds. Okay. And then finally, and these aren't necessarily in some order, you just want to do them all before you actually start with your focus. Adjust for your physical comfort, right? Adjust your chair. If the temperature needs adjusting, adjust it, make the music the right volume, all these different kinds of things. You may want to, as part of this, you may want to fill up your water bottle. Okay. Or you may not. Okay. But adjusting for that, right? Because you're going to be sitting there for a good little while. And ideally, your physical doesn't interrupt you. That wound up being the eventual barrier for me. Is I just I thought 90 minutes is a good chunk. I can be really productive in 90 minutes. It's sort of a long time in a workday, an hour and a half out of 8 hours. Okay. That's over 10% of your workday. And I did it regularly. I'm not going to claim I ever did it 5 days a week, but there were many weeks when I probably did it at least 3 or 4, and I may have done 5 a few times. And so it's fine. You don't have to torture yourself, and shouldn't, because if you have to torture yourself, then your brain just has that much more ammunition to resist. So get your comfort taken care of. Now, I'm not talking about bad ergonomic positions, because that will limit the amount of time you can stay there. Okay. But within reason, get comfortable. So now let's talk about kind of practice and recovery. Okay. So when I say practice, recognize that it's going to feel awkward at first, and it's going to be hard. Oh, did I shut down all the different dingers, pingers, and ringers? Okay. Well, let me think, right? Scratch out a checklist and keep it nearby. Okay. And that way you can be confident that you shut everything down, because, ooh, I forgot to shut down blah is a potentially distracting thought during your focus. Okay. So just go ahead and take care of it. Okay. But practice doing it. Don't expect to be terribly good at it out of the gate. Okay. You might be. If so, congratulations. But most people are not going to be, because we have different work habits from that, almost all of us. Your brain will resist. Okay. But just kind of push through that and do it anyway. You control that by controlling the length of time. Okay. So you might want to start with 30 minutes. And your brain says, well, there's urgent things going on. I got to attend to those. And you tell your brain, well, it's 30 minutes. Okay. Nothing's going to burn down in 30 minutes. Let's do this. Okay. And your brain will at least quiet down. So, doing it. Set a timer. This is actually one of this one had a foot in both boats. This is also part of the ritual, but it actually is so immediate to starting the work, right? It would be the last step of the ritual. So, but use a timer. Okay. The last thing you want is to go more than 30 minutes and have something happen that your brain uses later to punish you. You know what I mean? Your brain's not going to have any grace with, well, I went too long. Okay. Or not much. So set a timer and make it ding. It's okay. And then really try to exert yourself, exert your attention, and stay focused. And the tactic there is not gritted teeth and mantras. Okay. The trick there is to quickly notice if your focus has moved away. Well, the first thing is to have a clear intention on where your focus should be. I am writing this document. That's where my focus should be. Okay. 2 is noticing when your focus has drifted away. It's very hard to notice it while it's happening. It's like going to sleep. Okay. It's hard to tell when you went to sleep, but you wake up and you've been asleep, right? And so it's hard to feel yourself going to sleep. And so it's hard to feel yourself moving, but you identify it, you gently bring your brain back to task. Okay. And you're practicing learning how to quickly identify that and come back. Don't beat yourself up. Don't swear at yourself. Don't. Okay. It happens. Happens to all. Still happens to me. It happens less, but it still happens. So post-focus recovery. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to kind of swim back up to the surface. Okay. Focus time is over. You may want to reward your brain with, a little bebop, a little walk, a shot of coffee, whatever, you enjoy as you're coming back into the world. So you're opening all the doors and you're letting the sunshine back in and you're playing the music again and all these different sorts of things. Okay. And immediately you want to check your communications immediately when you come up from this or when you get back to your regular office, either one. Okay. If you have a separate space, I'd be very careful about, I'm using air quotes here if you can't see me, about polluting that space with other work. Okay. But so, but you do want to make a big deal out of checking again. Do it immediately. If you wait and something bad happens, you'll never know how long you can get away with it. Okay. So off you go, right? This reassures your brain that nothing blew up, everything was fine, and it helps you build the habit. And you're proving to yourself that your environment actually does permit this kind of behavior. Okay. Now, the backstory, I've alluded to this several times. When I was doing my dissertation, I did this because I felt like it was absolutely necessary. Most PhD students that don't complete their studies, okay, that don't graduate with the intended degree, it's because they don't ever write their dissertation. And there's even a term for it. You're probably familiar with it. It's ABD. And people will say, well, I'm ABD, right? Meaning, well, I don't actually have a PhD, but I worked on it. So, give me some props. Okay. Now, the dissertation, you probably have a sense of, it's a book. Okay. And mine was about 150 pages, which I think is pretty normal. Okay. Um, Writing a 150-page book is a hard thing, particularly at the level of thinking that is typically makes it an acceptable dissertation. Now, to be fair, that's the truly difficult part of becoming a high-level academic, is writing the dissertation. After that, if you're going to be successful, research should be a little bit easier for you, and your focus is to learn how to do that. Publishing research, I mean. Okay. So my teachers did me the favor of warning me and saying, hey, warned the whole cohort we had, hey, you can't write your dissertation 15 minutes at a time. You just can't. And they were right, because you have to get to a level of thinking, replicate the previous level of thinking that you were in so that you can continue to work. Okay. You can't write it in 15-minute increments, but you also can't sit down for 1,000 consecutive hours and knock it out. So you got to get somewhere in between. And this was my solution. Now, I would say blocking out 90 minutes, focus work, I would say that was instrumental in me completing my dissertation. And I would also say that it contributed greatly to the fact that my dissertation won awards. And I don't say that to brag, I say that as evidence. Okay. My dissertation was the best dissertation of the year. And papers from my dissertation were candidates for best paper at various academic conferences. And I will tell you this because I was able to put together this focus ritual and actually devote these 90-minute stretches to making progress. The fact that I got it done at all, and the fact that it was of the level of quality that it was, which was recognized by other people. So that's encouragement to do this. I say you do better work. I say you're calmer, all those sorts of things. That's my evidence. So all of that, again, if this is something you're interested in talking about, want to discuss, give me a shout. Larry at dobusywrite.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk about it with you and hear your perspective on it, hear your challenges, maybe swap a war story or two. Okay. But I want to encourage you to embrace this methodology, the attention compass methodology of focus and a set of workflows and things, because I think it will help you flourish. So the essence of architecting your digital sanctuary is to make it as easy as you possibly can. Okay. Pre-decide what your focused environment will look like and use tools like virtual desktop, sound management. Make this place simple to enter, because if it's easy, simple, one button, you're far more likely to actually do it than if it's hard. So give yourself some grace and practice using these tools. Practice getting into your space. Practice with your checklist. The one thing that your brain will definitely do initially is tell you it's too much trouble, or you don't have time, or it will say, your brain, don't like this. I find it boring, drudgery, painful, whatever. Now, expect that from your brain, okay? And be prepared. You're going to train your brain, and your brain's going to resist training, okay? Do it anyway. Practice, learn how to do it. Set that timer, okay? So if it's 30 minutes, it's 30 minutes. Start there with a goal of increasing that time period up to 45 when you think you can, right? Or even if you're going for 90, okay? Set the timer and get your head in and try and keep it there, okay? And crucially, when you're done, when the timer goes off, immediately and thoughtfully re-engage with your communications. Get the periscope up and look around the world, okay? That way, your brain will begin to understand that it's okay and that you will keep your commitment for 30 minutes, and then your brain will relax. And then maybe you can teach your brain 35 minutes. And then it relaxes again, okay? And then it gets smooth and easy as you extend it further out. I had to go through that. I didn't start at 90 minutes. Okay. So if you'll consistently apply these techniques, make them part of your workflow, close your digital office door, manage your environment, and use a simple focus ritual, you'll not only become more efficient and produce better work, but you'll also find yourself less stressed with a greater sense of calm and control over your digital life. Start simple, practice often, expect resistance, and build your own digital sanctuary. I'll leave it there for now. This is Larry Tribble, Ph.D. Thanks for taking some time to improve your task and information management on the Do Busy Right podcast. The show is dedicated to helping you think about how to get better at working. And we do this by improving your attention and your focus. I believe that your work is not just about your job, but about all the tasks that you do to turn yourself, your environment, and your relationships into what you want them to be. What we're really talking about here is the underpinnings of becoming who you want to be. The primary way I help people is through coaching the Attention Compass process. Attention Compass is 4 workflows and a tool set that support our information, task, and attention management. I help people with big goals to build habits that put them in a position to achieve. We do this by eliminating wasted time and wasted attention. If you'd like to know more, you can find me on LinkedIn or go to dobusyright.com for more information. Have a good week, more effective and less exhausted. Do Busy Right.